Hello, everyone. Um, this was a bit unexpected, but I just said fuck it and decided to do this anyway. Um, so, uh, sorry about that. Anyway, so this morning, I want to talk to everyone about this idea that I had not too long ago about a sort of uh, primary source show and tell kind of thing. I've reached out to a number of people about this. It's a sort of show I want to do on the Bowery Mick History YouTube channel because God knows that needs some content. Um, but it's sort of like a test run of things. I decided to do a live stream showcasing a couple primary sources that I've worked with in the past and that I have access to, and just sort of talk about them and talk about their stories and all that. In the future, there is a plan to do this sort of thing pre-recorded, of course, because live streams are a pain in the ass to schedule. Um, and just do this like with a guest and have them present primary source that they've worked with, that they have, or that they're passionate about. But since it's just me for this first sort of soft test run, I figured I'd do a couple primary sources. And for those who don't know, primary source is really any source that you know is contemporary to the period that you're studying. Or so, for example, is this first source? Let me pull it up. Where are you? Yes. Is this right here? So this is a court document from March 28th, 1728. And this is available open access at the digital collection of Mosin Library from Gettysburg College. In fact, okay, Coffee Maker has some choice words. Let me throw the link to that in the chat so that everyone who wants to check out this source can see it. So it's a court document from 1728. When I was an undergrad at Gettysburg College, I was assigned with a friend of mine to transcribe this document. And we did it, transcribed the whole thing as best we could. And it's actually a really interesting document. So it's an indictment of sorts. Actually, no, it straight up is an indictment for a fellow named James Carr. And I actually have the transcription pulled up right here. And I'm gonna fuck it. It's not a particularly long document. And it reads, the grand inquest of our Lord the King upon their respective oaths and affirmations do present that James Carr of the city of Philadelphia, laborer, the 28th day of March in the year of the reign of our Lord George II, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, and the first at the city aforesaid, within the jurisdiction of this court, and divers other days and times, as well as before as after, at the day aforesaid, at the city aforesaid, of his own proper authority without a recommendation from the justices or the governor's license for the same. A certain tippling house or public house of entertainment then and there did keep, and in the same house then and there commonly and publicly sell and utter and cause to be sold and utter diverse liquors called punch, beer, rum, and other strong liquors, to diverse liege subjects of our said lord the king, inhabiting the city aforesaid, to the great hurt and detriment of the liege subjects of our said lord the king, inhabiting the said city, to the evil examples of others in such cases delinquents against an act of General Assembly of this province, in the case made and provided, as also against the peace of our said Lord the King, his crown and dignity, and so on. So basically, James Carr was being indicted for selling illegal alcohol. um, he's basically selling booze without a liquor license, um, which, I tried to find out what happened to James Carr, but I couldn't really find anything about him, other than this one single court document. Now, what's really interesting, though, is should be able to where is it? Let me find the other one. No, the other one. Is that? Yep, that's it. So this is the back of the document. And what's interesting about, the back of the document is it has a couple names, which were the person I worked with on this, were only able to identify two of the names on the back. One was Richard Hazley. The other was James Mars, both of whom I tried to find out more about, but was unsuccessful. Oddly enough, James Mars also happens to be the exact same name as a man who was born and lived in, what's the wording? James Mars happens to be the exact same name as where is it? Oh no, that's James Carr. As a black man who was born into slavery in Connecticut, and actually published, his life story was published in, I believe, the 19th century. But what's really interesting about the back of this document is right off to the side, under those two scratched out words, is a Latin phrase. The Latin phrase is bella vera, which was a legal term at the time, that was used a lot at the time, and it just means true bill, or literally translates to a true bill. And that means that basically, if it's, a proposed bill or an indictment, that it was passed or acted upon, which means James Carr was indicted for the illegal sale of illegal alcohol and had to go stand trial. Beyond that, I have not been able to find anything else regarding the life of James Carr, what happened after this indictment. But if anyone has found anything related to anyone named James Carr from around this period, please let me know, because when I first encountered this story, I thought it was just kind of interesting that it's an interesting look at the legal system in early 18th century America, in colonial America. I mean, it also, I mean, y'all heard me read the transcription of the document. They use a lot of words to say just this guy is accused of selling illegal booze, which there's a lot of pomp and circumstance going into just regular standard legal proceedings under the British Empire. All right, so that's it for the first source. Let me stop sharing my screen. There is something going on with that. That's what that is. Okay, that should fix it. Anyway, the second one is actually a physical source that I have with me right now, and this was generously given to me by a good friend of mine, who's been following Bowery Mick history since our very humble beginnings. And Jim, if you're watching, thank you for this. This is a book. Here's the title: Contemporary American History by Beard. This is actually really cool. So you open up the cover, and right there on the inside cover, War Service Library sticker, which means this was donated for use by American servicemen during the First World War, which is really fucking cool. Then, okay, so it's published in 1918. Okay, Charles A. Beard, and it's a contemporary history of the United States, from post-Reconstruction up to 1913. And that's all well and good. Okay, there are tons of books that cover that exact same period. But what's really cool, this is 1918. And generally when we think of histories written in 1918, we think that they might be a little more nice to the South, especially Southern whites. The very first chapter of this book is called The Restoration of White Dominion in the South. And the first chapter, Beard goes into all sorts of shit that goes on post-Reconstruction under the Hayes administration. And you get a general sense that he does not like Rutherford B. Hayes at all. And it's really interesting to see a book from an era that we generally consider to be very, very not progressive in terms of race. And, this isn't like, he's not, saying, Charles A. Beard is not Malcolm X, but considering the other work that's being published at that time, he is a lot more progressive in how he's interpreting, this period in American history, when compared to, other historians and other work that's being done at the time. I've only read through the first chapter of this book, but given what I have read, I'm kind of interested to see where he goes with this. But yeah, this is a very cool little source, especially for anyone who's trying to, compile a sort of historiography of post-Civil War America, especially in relation to race in post-Civil War America, which is a big thing that people are studying nowadays, and a very important story to study. So yeah, that's really cool. Thank you, Jim, for giving me this. This is awesome. I've had it for months, and I've been trying to, and I was so cool that I just wanted to do something with it content-wise, because it is a really cool source that I felt like people should see. And I'm glad to have finally found a way to do it. So our last source is an artifact similar to the book, but also very different. And this, I'm actually pulling this from the, what is it? This is coming from the Royal Collections Trust website. So this is the British Royal Collections Trust, which oversees countless artifacts throughout British history, particularly pertaining to the British royal monarchy and all that. They oversee a number of museums and such, and a very large collection. And in one of the collections at the King George V's War Museum is this little thing. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on a past live stream months ago. Is this. It's a rifle. The astute gun experts in the audience will probably recognize it as a Mosin Nagant Russian rifle. And what's interesting about this rifle is that it was pulled out of the ocean off the coast of Ireland in 1916. So to give some background to this, the German army captured several thousand Mosin Nagants in 1914, right after the Battle of Tannenberg at the end of August of that year. And we're talking thousands, like an absurd number. Just an absurd amount of Mosin Nagant rifles. And these rifles were used by the German army in various capacities. Training was a big one. They had hoped to rechamber the Mosin Nagants for German cartridges, but German cartridges were actually slightly bigger than the Mosin Nagant cartridge, so that was a bit difficult. A lot of times they would just be handed out to frontline troops because there wasn't really a shortage of Russian ammunition to be found on the Eastern Front, but that was not super common. And in 1916, when Irish Republicans began trying to court German friendship in preparation for a potential uprising in Ireland, the Germans agreed to offer to give the Irish rebels arms and ammunition for this planned uprising. There's a larger plan to this uprising that involves the Germans. There was also supposed to be an Irish brigade in the German army that was supposed to be recruited from Irish prisoners of war. They couldn't get enough recruits, so that didn't pan out. There was also supposed to be, at one point, a German offensive on the Western Front to coincide with this uprising that was going to take place in Ireland, but that never really materialized either. But the rifles did. 20,000 of these Mosin Nagants were shipped to Ireland in the spring of 1916, just a few weeks before the Easter Rising. And they were actually caught trying to land in Ireland. And the crew of the ship, which I think it mentions the ship, it was the SMS Libau, yeah, Libau. And once they were caught, they were like, shit, we got to scuttle the whole thing. So 20,000 rifles, or a large portion of these rifles, ended up in the bottom of the ocean. What didn't end up in the bottom of the ocean was confiscated by, I believe the Royal Irish Constabulary was the primary, took the lead on that operation. And the Irish Republican leader in charge of this whole operation was a fellow named Sir Roger Casement, who had previously made a name for himself for bringing, for helping bring global attention to Belgian atrocities in the Congo. But by the First World War, he had left British Foreign Service and had firmly became a supporter of the Irish Republican movement, and was the sort of lead liaison between the Irish Republican Brotherhood and the German government. For that role, he was eventually arrested around the same time that these rifles. He was actually arrested when these rifles were scuttled, because he was coming back with that shipment. He was coming back to Ireland with that shipment, and when everyone got caught, he was the guy in charge of this whole thing. So the British arrested him, tried him for high treason, and he was executed a couple weeks, maybe it was a couple days after. And no, he was arrested. He was executed in London a couple weeks after the Easter Rising. So he was sort of the, I guess he was the 18th person killed for his role in the Easter Rising, at least executed by the British government for his role in the Easter Rising. He's probably the only one that the British could actually justify. The others, there's really no justification. At the very least, Casement was, getting all buddy with the British government, and not the British government, the German government. So you could make a case to the international community that, yeah, he fucked up. So yeah, so those are the three sources that I had lined up for all this. So with that in mind, this is sort of what this whole idea is going to end up being. Actually, yeah, let me toss that link in the chat as well. Anyone who's interested in checking out either that rifle or some of the other stuff that's in the British, or in the Royal Collection Trust, because there is a lot more interesting stuff in there. It's definitely worth checking out. But the plan for this sort of thing is bringing on guests. I've reached out to a number of people who, if you're watching, you know who you are. If you're wondering why I didn't reach out to you, it's probably because I forgot. But bringing on guests and having them present, one or two primary sources similar to what I just did, and do that on a weekly basis. And that's part of the reason why I want to do it as a pre-recorded thing, because that's just so much easier on everyone's schedule. It's a lot less work for me. So be on the lookout for more stuff like this on the Bowery Mick History YouTube channel. Starting hopefully beginning of 2022. There's a big emphasis on that, hopefully. um, but and also, if you have any suggestions for how the show should run, um, or what kind of stuff you want to see, or if you are someone who has um, some primary sources or some artifacts that you think is really cool that you want to talk about, you know, leave a comment, or check out the Bowery Mick History website. There is a whole section there on uh actually I don't think I put up a section on how to get in contact with for this sort of thing, but there are multiple ways you can get in contact with Bowery Mick History if you have something that you want to show off and talk about on the primary source show and tell. um Probably won't that I really hope that's not the name, because that's a mouthful of what of the show. That's a mouthful for a title, but that's probably going to be the name because I'm not super creative with that sort of thing. But anyway, so thank you all who came and watched and hung out. I hope this was interesting to people. I tried to get a variety of sources from a variety of periods and subject matter. But if but yeah, that's all I got. Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day. If you're watching on Twitch, I'm actually going to be streaming on Twitch later today. Just really hanging out, playing some video games, and talking about history, wherever else comes to mind. So if you're watching on Twitch, or if you know are interested in watching stuff on Twitch, head over to the Bowery Mick History Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Bowery Mick History. Can I? Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but yeah. Other than that, thank you and have a great rest of your day.